Hi, this is Diane Lovetobake on YouTube, and what we're going to make is actually maple cinnamon or sweet rolls. This particular dough, though, you can make a coffee cake. I actually have two uses for this recipe. I make sweet rolls out of them, and that's what I'm going to talk about in just a few seconds. And then also I make it in a, like a round coffee cake. And it's really a great recipe. The dough is so easy to work with. Now, the dough itself, I do make it in the bread maker on the dough cycle. You certainly can make this dough by hand if you prefer. I'm going to give you the directions and ingredients of the recipe right off the bat because they'll no longer be below the video. And I'll explain that in a moment, but let me give you the recipe first off. Now, if you're using, again, your bread maker, follow the directions on what you're supposed to put in first, whether it's the liquid or whether it's the dry. Every bread maker has a different way of doing it, so follow your bread maker's directions. You will need 1 package of dry active yeast. You're going to need a 1/4 cup of water, and that's got to be at least at a temperature anywhere from 105 to 110 Fahrenheit, and 1 cup of milk. And what I do is I actually heat my milk and my water together in the microwave to do that. You will need 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. You'll need a 1/4 cup of whatever type of oil that you prefer to use for this recipe. 1 teaspoon of salt and 3 1/4 cups of bread flour. This particular recipe, I've never made it with all-purpose flour, but if you are looking for sweet rolls or coffee cakes with all-purpose flour, I have several on my channel, so please check it out. But this particular recipe, I have only used, whether I make the sweet rolls out of it or I make a coffee cake out of it, with bread flour. You'll need 1 egg, and it's slightly beaten, of course. All right, so that's the recipe. Now, I want to take out the dough to show you what it looks like, and I will tell you that this is half of the dough. Okay, I usually break it up into 2. Now you can make all your rolls at one time, or as I said, when I make a coffee cake, I make just 1 large coffee cake out of this, but this is half. This is half, cut in half. All right, so we're just going to put a little flour down here on my countertop, and then I'm going to use my rolling pin just to roll this out. Now you'll want to roll it out to a rectangle, and I usually have my ruler out, but I don't, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball out this rectangle. You don't have to be real perfect with it. Let me move that a little bit there. Okay, but you get an idea. Okay, and that's probably about a 10 by 12. Okay, so once you've got that rectangle, you will need butter, melted butter. Okay, now this is again half that I have that I'm showing. Now, on the filling, let me give you that recipe now, the ingredients. You'll need a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and you're going to put 1 teaspoon of cinnamon in that, okay? And then you're also going to be putting in 1 teaspoon of maple extract, and I put that actually into my melted butter, okay? And you're going to need a half a cup of chopped nuts, whatever that you want, whether you want to use pecan or walnuts or pistachios, whatever is your, you know, your favorite favorite nut. And I'm just going to start to paint the butter on the top with my pastry brush here. And I'm going to try to stay away from the edges a little bit, you know, maybe a ½ inch or so. And paint it as evenly as possible. Now what I do is, as I mentioned, I do melt my butter. I allow it to cool a little bit. Then I add that maple extract in it. And then just take your cinnamon filling and put that all over the top. And, you know, try to put it on as evenly as possible. You don't want to go right to the edge, but try to cover, you know, at least a ¼ inch or so to the edge, and apply it as evenly as possible that you can. Again, you're seeing amounts cut in half, okay? Now, I usually get around 22 rolls out of the full recipe, okay? And then just take your nuts and put those on the top. If you think a ½ cup is too much, then just use less. You can always use the nuts for another recipe. And then I'm going to roll the long end, but I'm going to roll towards this way so that you can perhaps see it better. And then we're just going to roll it up like in a jelly roll style. Try to roll it as evenly as possible. I could use just a little more flour here. This dough is so nice to work with. It really has a nice elasticity to it. It's not a real sticky dough, which is really kind of a nuisance when you work with a lot of sticky doughs, and it isn't. Now you're going to, when you get the end, of course, you're going to need to seal it. So I actually just take it and pull it over like that, and then I'm going to move it towards me, and then I'm just going to seal that, kind of tuck it under, pull and tuck and smooth with my fingertips. And everyone has a different way of closing it, but I actually close mine. I push down the center and to the right and to the left, and then I just pull it up like I'm wrapping a package. Now everybody is different how you close, and then I just pull it all together, and again I just push it down in the center, to the right and to the left, a little flap, bring that flap up, give it one more pinch, and then I use my palm just to make sure. And I'm going to need a little bit more flour here on my countertop. And then while I'm pressing that seam together, I'm just going to stretch the roll out a little bit. And as I'm stretching it, again, I want to make it as even as possible. Now, when you cut your rolls, you can cut it with a very sharp knife or a piece of string, like I prefer to use string rather than a knife. And then you will need a pan or a baking pan or dish, and heavily grease it. And then if you're using string, about 2 inches or so, these rolls, just put your string underneath and then just lay them down into your pan. Let's cut another one. Just crisscross your string, cut it off, and then lay it down on your pan. And like I said, I usually get 11, so I get 22 rolls out of it. Now, once you cut them, put a clean kitchen towel over the top of them and let them double in size. Now, that might take you 45 minutes. It might take you an hour. It really depends on the temperature of your kitchen. Okay, so let me move this out of the way because I want to clean this area up real quickly, and then I'd like to rinse my hands and show you what these look like once they're baked up. So these rolls are quite easy to make, and as a coffee cake, well, it's just really, I think, an exceptional recipe. And this is how they look when they're baked up. Now, I did put a glaze over them, a maple glaze, or drizzle icing if you prefer to call it that. And you will use 1 cup of powdered sugar, a half a teaspoon again of your maple extract, okay, and 1 tablespoon of milk. And you'll make a nice glaze for them, and as I mentioned, this is a half of the dough, okay, and these are still slightly warm, but let me get a knife here. Now, you can eat these once they're as we're going to, because I've got some people in the kitchen I know are eyeballing these to have them. And warm is really a great way to eat these, and they're great with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. But I don't know if you'll see how light and delicate when I push on the dough. They're not heavy or dense. They're so light, so delicate, they just melt in your mouth. And again, I don't know if you can see as I'm pushing on that roll and how it comes right back, how tender and how light this dough bakes up to. It really is. You can see, look at how flaky it is and how light this is. They're just delicious rolls. They really are. Whether you make them a little smaller as these are and divide it into half, or just make the whole batch of rolls and try it as a coffee cake, as a round coffee cake. It really just comes out just delicious. Now, if you like this recipe, well, leave a comment because I like to hear from you. But this is where I'm reminding everybody is that please watch me solely on YouTube, because that's the only place that I put my videos on. So when you write me a question or a comment, I'm going to get it and I'm going to answer it in a timely fashion. But if you're watching me somewhere else, you're leaving comments and whatever, and I can't answer them, and it's so frustrating. And so again, I'm sorry that I'm not giving you the recipe below the video as I did for so many years, but it's just not worth it anymore right now to do so. And I want to just thank you for watching Diane Lovetobake on YouTube. If you're so inclined and you'd like to subscribe to the channel, boy, I'd really appreciate it, or give me a like, or even ring the bell. I always appreciate the time you take to write or to watch my channel. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.